Skadoosh. And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another Chris Chan article of Chris and negotiation. This ought to be hilarious, this one. Let's start with a quote called, "I'm working on it." That was my Chris Chan voice pre Tom Girl phase. Did you think it was funny? Chris on everything and anything and elsewhere. "Shut up and buy my toys, please." Chris to a potential... Did he really say that to a potential... Hang on. I've got to do it like I'd imagine Chris throwing a tantrum sort of phrase. So, "Shut up and buy my toys, please." Ow. Fuck. You know what you're gonna see this a lot when it comes to these sort of articles, ladies and gentlemen, is that Chris will threaten or be rude to someone and then will immediately follow it up with please or thank you or have a nice day. You're going to see that a lot, and you're going to work, and if you haven't worked out very, very quickly why that doesn't work, well, you're about to be amazed. When dealing with Chris, oftentimes it's referred to as dealing, trolls often experience his unique form of negotiation. Due to a severe sense of entitlement, a lifetime of coddling and other factors beyond his control, Chris has no grasp of how to compromise and often fails to understand what sort of bargaining position he's in. Often, trolls blackmailing Chris will find him making demands of them as if he were the one with leverage. Conversely, some have experienced the oddity of having Chris run away from a situation where he was purposely given the upper hand. When it comes to dealing with Chris directly, one can only expect that he will always take the path of least resistance, even if it doesn't benefit him. And you can see here Chris and his Mary Sue persona, Nightstar, negotiating with the perpetually smiling executives of Hasbro over his desires for My Little Pony Friendship is Magic to continue as depicted in one of his TSSF cards. And we're going to read the through all of this because this is going to be just funny. Yeah. "Now listen, we know your game, your greedy corporate executives," Nightstar says. "Your little game of showing us crap work to delay the extension of G4 is crap." Redundant, much redundant? "You think you could just buy and bide your time for money. You are wrong and messed up." Irony is a bliss in Chris's mind. I chime in. "That is right. Even I know of the main six all becoming alicorns for the round table of friendship. And I know that idea was streaming around your creative teams and all of the offices for a long time now. And I know your secrets. We all do. So cut the bullshit and just make the announcement now about My Little Pony Friendship is Magic." Bearing in mind, this is supposed to be for children, and Chris is now including swearing. "About My Little Pony Friendship is Magic getting 5 more seasons." And the next day, after they agreed, a TV announcement was publicly aired many, many times on Discovery Family. That's... okay. Whatever, Chris throwing a tantrum just because of a children's show, of all things. Concept of compromise. Negotiation is based on compromise. Both parties must work together and make conscious decisions to each other to find the best possible solution to their problems in a satisfactory manner. Chris doesn't understand this. What a surprise. And arguably cannot understand this, given his severely stunted ability to understand that other people have thoughts and feelings that differ from his own. That is just seems far too much for Chris to possibly handle. Yeah. Being completely egocentric, Chris believes that in any exchange, both parties must share the same viewpoint, his. Chris can't stand any form of prolonged confrontation and quickly tires if his demands aren't met exactly as he has made them. On numerous occasions, Chris has tried to negotiate either by making ridiculous demands or outright refusing to give anything up, or do anything at all for that matter. Defeats the points of compromise there, but whatever. After he makes his case, his mind is quote-unquote closed on the matter, and he is unwilling to budge. Unlike his colon anytime he's had a gallon of Coke. When further pressed, He often shuts down completely and walks away from the table, into the waiting arms of his PlayStation 3. Other times, Chris just asks whoever he has bothered if both of them can just forgive and forget. He said this to Michael Snyder when asking about being unbanned from the gameplays, 2 years after his original ban. That may be somewhat understandable, but Chris also tried the same excuse a day after he doxed Mr. Smith. Something that was, again, Chris's own fault. Chris's attempted at negotiations. Something tells me I should have dressed up a little bit more formal for this, but trust me, these are going to be very, very open-closed arguments. Mary Lee Walsh. One of the earliest examples of Chris's attempts at negotiation was after his expulsion from his community college. In emails between Mary Lee Walsh and himself, Chris was unapologetic about a violent outburst that he had in their previous meeting. Instead of apologizing like any ordinary person would, Chris offered to never hang notes on the wall again and to consider stopping my silent treatment of Susan Hannafan, a PVCC guidance counselor. To further sweeten the deal, Chris offered to knock Walsh and Susan up my scale of respect each by 2 points. Okay. Ignoring the horrible choice of words in regards to knocking up 2 of his female superiors, Chris believed that an imaginary measurement of his personal opinion was an extremely important bargaining chip. Lo and behold, it wasn't. This is an example of how Chris behaves in negotiations, where he wants something from another person, by offering minimal effort on his part, but expecting full returns from the other party. We'll discuss this more in detail because it will become prevalent in the next parts. Shigeru Miyamoto. During the Nintendo saga, Shigeru Miyamoto stated that Chris must meet him at Nintendo's America headquarters in Redmond, Washington. Chris handled this by making a video where he pretended to come back from Redmond when he never left the house. Chris demanded that the CEO of an international company come to his house and meet with him. When Chris was pressed as to why the meeting had to be at his house, Chris said that he had no money. When he was asked why he had no money, he said he had no job. When he asked why he didn't have a job, Chris made various excuses and cited his very brief employment at Wendy's. All 3 days of it. He also insulted Miyamoto, asking him, "Are you the Mario who plays fair, or the Bowser Koopa who cheats and lies?" This sort of pass-the-buck attitude is very common when dealing with Chris. Nothing negative can ever be his fault. Audiobooks. In 2009, Chris came into contact with one Vivian G, a white knight, who eventually turned into a troll. You gotta love the fact that somebody who was willing to defend Chris is now turning on him just because he's insufferable to her. Vivian was very helpful to Chris at first, but Chris refused to hear any of her input. As a result, their friend relationship soured, and Vivian started a popular Solitude parody audiobook that Chris despised. Chris ranted and raved, as he's wont to do. Also, he was going to do anyway, so... demanding that the audiobooks be removed. They were not. 1 month later, Chris quickly changed his tune. After taking out a copyright on the name Sonichu, Chris believed he had now had magical copyright powers. Actually, since I did like the copyright article, that's the best way to take a look at this. Copyright powers. Like, he could just shoot lightning and suddenly people get granted cease and desist. And demanded that Vivian give him 25% of all the profits she made from the audiobooks, which was 0 since the audiobooks were free gifts, as long as people made a $20 donation. Way to go, Chris. Overnight, something that he had made death threats over became not only welcome, but highly sought after. That's right, Chris will now issue death threats just on a whim, because somebody is actually being successful. You might say it's at Chris's expense, but what expense did Chris go to making his books in the first place? Jack Thaddeus. When Jack stole Chris's PSN accounts, Chris asked him, "Why don't you come down to my house yourself in person unless you are the cowardly weakling?" Jack had to remind him that Jack held all the cards, and Chris was in no position to make demands. I'm getting my hair cut tomorrow anyway. I can't just keep brushing it for the rest of my life. That is my house. After his parents ordered that he remove all copies of his video tour of 14 Branch Lane Court from the internet, Chris made another video in which he made his demand that all the copies of the tour which had been uploaded by trolls be taken down. Rather than calmly and politely explaining that the videos pose a threat to his safety of his family, which would likely have gotten at least some of the trolls to remove their copies, Chris loudly shrieks like a child and even turns his demands from being idiotic to being vaguely insulting by admitting it was his fault for uploading the videos, and it was, then immediately threatening the trolls with detectives and police if they didn't immediately do as he asked. Humorously, Bob does a better job at mentioning how serious the situation is at hand, but because Chris didn't include his speech in the final video, the damage the trolls would cause in result was inevitable. Yeah. Also, actually, just in case you didn't think I was telling the truth. What's this? Do you realize something? Let me tell you. If the Rebel Alliance sees those Death Star plans that you put in the damn droid, they could destroy our base and we would have to move out of it. Okay, oh, that is... Oh, okay. I see what you did there. Warning, the video features high levels of tarn rage, angry solitude face. Oh god, let's do this. Unintentional comedy.
This does not even deserve a captain's log introduction, because this is dead serious. The inside and outside tour I did a few months ago of my house, everyone on the internet, my mother and my father are angry at me. They're blaming at me. It's my fault. I admit it's my fault. I want everything about my house off the internet. I'll send in detectives. I'll send in police. I'll send in everything in my power. So yeah, please get everything off of the internet now. Curse the trolls. Peace to everybody else.
You know, Chris doesn't even do a good job of being angry most of the time because he swaps it literally on a limb. On a limb bit of lettuce. And also notice how his demands are just no. That's about... Chris couldn't think of, anything else to say apart from that. Wow. Sweetheart sagas. Whenever Chris wants to meet one of his sweethearts in real life, he usually wants them to come to him. Never a good idea. No matter how difficult such a trip would be, he wanted Pantahalo to come to him despite her living in Australia. He wanted Julie to come to him even though she was supposedly a poor immigrant who couldn't afford a car or bus fare. He wanted Casey to come to him even though she lived in the DC area, which is an hour or so from Ruckersville. One of the most recent sweethearts, Jackie Pan, was willing to have a relationship with Chris as long as he tried to become a better person. Instead of trying to put more effort and trying to better himself, he decided to end things. During the July saga, Chris made several deals with Clyde Cash and the Miscreants, all of which he reigned on. In the first deal, Chris agreed to do a video where he came out of the closet to save Julie's life. In the first take, he called himself a gay-bian, which was done so that he could somehow say he was gay without actually calling himself gay. He did a second take where he clearly stated that he was being forced to say he was gay. When he finally did call himself a homosexual, he mumbled it and said that he was gay. The second deal was that Chris would clean his room to save Julie's life, and that he would do a video to prove it was clean. To avoid having to clean his room, as opposed to just cleaning it, he merely pushed some of his stuff aside and filmed his floor for 30 seconds, before he did his captain's log. The final deal resulted in the infamous Julie reveals herself call. Blue Spike, as both Julie and her kid brother Max had gained access to Chris's PSN account in the guise of Max. He offered Chris an ultimatum: the PSN and Yahoo accounts or Julie. In a conversation before the call, Chris told Max that he chose Julie believing, like in the movies and TV, he would get both back for making the right choice. Right when Max put Julie on, Chris immediately asked her to get his PSN and Yahoo accounts back. Failing that, he tried to guilt Max into giving it back to him. In the main call, Max gives Chris one last chance to change his choice. He sticks with Julie despite the hold that his PSN account has over him. When Max threatened to sell his account on eBay, he revealed that he made the right choice and that he deserves his PSN. Yeah, well, don't look too far anyway, because was a screwed up situation in itself. So, Chris's Wikipedia captain. When he was given his wiki for free, he demanded complete executive control from day one. In Chris's mind, this meant that every demand he made would be fulfilled by the staff, and that anything done without his permission would be removed immediately. He insisted on a gaudy background and threatened to stop working whenever the webmaster displeased him. Later, when Jack Thaddeus graciously paid for the Wikipedia's web space with ads featuring homoerotic images, Chris went on a tirade and immediately demanded that they be taken down, yet refused to even consider paying for his own website. When removal failed, he said that he wanted them to be smaller, as if he had some say in how large advertisements were. Chris had no concept of how advertising worked, but merely assumed that he had the final say in literally everything. Later, during the popularity contest between Sonichu and Asperchu, he tried to make amends with Alec Benson Leary to remove Asperchu ads from the front page of the Wikipedia. However, instead of making reparations, Chris demanded that Alec tell his fans to go back to Sonichu, which is something that would just never work in any competition. Chris, who was in no position to make requests, attached several clauses to his apologies. Chris's list of demands was larger than the apology, then they bundled with. All of this came after Chris drew a comic where he broke into Alex's house, stole a dating game from his Xbox 360, blew up then said Xbox, and raided a group of Rose Jews that he implied were the victims of sexual abuse. After finally fulfilling most of Alex's requests in a substandard and slapdash manner, Chris killed him, his webmaster, and two other comic artists in Sonichu number 10, as some sort of childish form of revenge. Just once again throwing a sort of like a more elaborative tantrum, but he threw one nonetheless. The PlayStation Network. Often trolls will gain access to Chris's PSN and make various demands. The most common of these demands is that he sell or throw out some of his beloved toys or games. Despite his claims that he plays with everything in his room, I doubt that, a glance at his PSN accounts show otherwise. Most of his PSN activity is divided between Little Big Planet, God of War 3, and Mod Nation Racers, which leaves most of his vast collection of games completely untouched. Even though he doesn't use the majority of the toys and games he owns, he refuses to sell them. This refusal is usually followed up by him saying that he doesn't have the money to do something that would improve his life. Also, by the time Chris's stuff does get auctioned off in one way or another, imagine how cheap it will become. So if you want to get like a really cheap copy of, The Evil Within, for example, you might just be in luck. Between late August 2010 and early September 2010, Chris was met with the opportunity, not really, of gaining $9,001 in exchange for the destruction of his PlayStation 3. Needless to say, it didn't go well. The bounty was only for trolls and was, in turn, fake. However, Chris tried to haggle, albeit very poorly, with Clyde Cash and Surfshack Tito to get something that never existed. The ultimate result was that this was Chris actually waiting for his money at the Charlottesville Fashion Square after being tricked into going there. After realizing he had been tricked, he ended up by telling them, "Go point at your own damn snouts and oink like Eric Cartman, and then rape yourselves with your own damn Darth Maul dual lightsaber." Flipnote Studio on 3DS. In one of Chris's many Flipnote Studio creations, he requests that Nintendo port the software to their 3DS platform. In typical Chris fashion, his animation consists of him yelling loudly and demanding that Nintendo bring the software to the 3DS. Chris had sped his voice up to the point where it's hard to decipher what he's saying, but he assumes that being loud will get you what you want. Throughout the entire animation, his tone of voice and choice of words suggest that he's under the impression that he's some sort of spokesperson for all Flipnote users. Nintendo eventually released Flipnote Studio 3D in February 2015, though how much this actually had to do with Chris whining like an absolute baby back in 2011, I'll leave up for you to decide. Calling out. Returning to YouTube after a 8-month hiatus, Chris decided to confront two of his trolls, Surfshark Tito and Forg, over what they've done, and demanded that Tito apologize to Sony over the hackings and to the Wallflower for breaking them up, then gave him $1,000 and telling Forg to apologize for putting up pictures years ago and to put up a non-slanderous billboard saying that Chris is straight. He also wants them to remove all contributions to the Quickie. If these weren't done, he'd reveal their pictures and possibly other docs and have the trolls troll them. Unlike the incident involving Clive Cash returning in a very poorly made decision, Chris honestly believes he has the upper hand and can finally pay back against some of his trolls. However, what he's doing isn't a negotiation, but an extortion, expecting these goals to be completed or they were to suffer the consequences, with Chris doing nothing on his part. Apart from making himself look like an idiot, that's what he's managed to do. eBay and Craigslist sales. Chris's idea of salesmanship is interesting to say the least. He attempts to sell mostly old, broken or worthless items and tends to demand many times the item's actual value in exchange, often non-negotiable. An early example was an attempt to sell an ancient television on Craigslist, demanding $250 for a piece of junk he'd be lucky to sell for a tenth of that sum. Since then, he has become a much more prolific e-merchant and has whittled away. 2014, charging thousands of dollars for his art on eBay, showing that he is still delusional enough to vastly overestimate his e-fame and artistic talent. Similarly, he tried to sell his late father's replica of a Stradivarius violin for almost $100,000, as if he believed that a violin with a manufactured label saying it was made in the 1950s on its interior could be the real thing. Most recently, he has attempted to sell his and his mother's ancient, barely functioning cars. Typical of Chris, he is demanding thousands of dollars for cars which are worth maybe a few hundred as scrap value. He also charismatically demanded that the deal in question is of a no-haggle nature, even when setting unrealistic asking prices on sites where haggling is often the norm. Needless to say, most of Chris's merchandise either go unsold or he is forced to accept a more realistic price for it. We can only assume the rest is bought by his mostly avid fans, who glory in the opportunity to possess samples of his fine work. However, Chris may not just ask for ridiculous prices in exchange for his shitty possessions, because he's taking his prospective buyers for fools, but because he doesn't know the first thing about value. Consider his lavish spending sprees that transcend his ability to fund them. His parents taught him nothing about the value of money, which he thinks can be pissed away nonchalantly. He also struggles with measurement, as evidenced by his estimation of a 12-pack can of lemonade weighing 50 pounds, a symptom of autism. It's possible that his incompetence in this regard also extends to an extension of estimation of value. The reality, however, could be something much more sinister. The high prices he sets for his goods may not be due to ignorance of value, but a symptom of his abject materialism and hoarding, inherited from Bob. It's possible that Chris is so attached to and obsessed with his material possessions that he seriously finds his ludicrous prices an acceptable consolation to him, to have to give up his part of his precious hoard. Unban contracts. In October 2016, Chris delivered contracts to at least two stores, GameStop and Best Buy, from which he was banned. In these contracts, which were likely not signed, he puts in a clause stating the stores in question can't call the police against him. Well, see how well that works out, making the contract null and void, since contracts can't protect against prosecution. He also wants the managers to forgive and forget, and claims that not signing proves that they are most uncompassionable and lacking of heart and soul of any person. Now they'll listen to him for saying that. Chris's tactics. And here's a big one right now, ignoring reality. When Chris is faced with a task requiring any effort on his part, which is quite often, but no matter how minimal, or involves something that does not benefit him any way, shape or form, he completely ignores it. Chris automatically disregards anything that will not benefit him immediately, or almost immediately. The hardest part of negotiating with Chris is that if you make a demand that he does not agree to, he shuts down, like a spoiled infant. Chris will not even deal with something that isn't self-serving and easy. On the other hand, when you have something Chris wants, Chris will not give up until he has acquired it, on his terms. When the road to a reward has a sign that bluntly says Chris is not eligible, he will attempt to get the reward anyway, or claim that the rules are discriminatory and unfair. Chris will pursue his goal thoughtlessly and simple-mindedly, expending great resources in the process, often ignoring even the idea that he might not get what he wants. In this process, he frequently acts as if he has some sort of leverage, even in situations where this is manifestly not the case. He continually made demands of the Wikipedia's administrators, for instance, even though they had full control over the website and he had nothing. Altering reality. In some instances, the rare ones that he does what he was instructed to do, anything said or done he feels slandered his good name, he will simply state our lies and instruct everyone to ignore them. Then he will close his mind on the subject. This is retarded for two reasons. By telling his fans to ignore the lies, he is alerting fans that that are a little behind on what's happening with Chris of their existence, making more people see them than they would have it if he didn't acknowledge them. He is also showing he is aware of their existence and still insisting they are lies. Delays. You can't go wrong with MLP porn overpaying your debts. Oh god, let's see this. I enjoy your drawing style despite the content. I have an idea for the next one, or future one, for your Kitten Bell, Vinyl Scratch and Octavia humans being on each other. Well, I suppose that just tells us everything we need to know, so maybe they're both sitting up, making out and fondling, fingering, putting on a jamming boombox, playing some Dubert cello mix. Great. Delays. When Chris has to meet a requirement during a negotiation, most notably deadlines, he will explain that he is, quote-unquote, working on it. To Chris, saying this is an acceptable substitute for actual work, whether or not he is indeed working on it, if in his own good time, Chris feels inclined to fulfill the detail. He'll submit whenever he wants to, regardless of the original agreement, well after the deadline. If the agreement was that he would receive something for the work done, he will demand it unceasingly, despite not holding up his end of the deal in any way, shape or form. This is why if Chris decided to ever advertise himself on Cameo or Fiverr, he would be shut down within, I'd say, a month of each other, because he will systematically ignore orders and charge extortionate prices. Even if Chris somehow agrees to set a set of terms, he will try to get around them. If he agrees to give something up for someone, he will go behind that person's back to get it back so that he could have both. If he agrees to draw a comic, he will most likely do something easier, like making a video or write a blog entry, figuring that that counts as work. If he agrees to willingly slander himself, like calling himself gay, for instance, he'll either mumble it so it's completely incomprehensible, or he'll hide his face. Because, you know, what we talked about effort, and also the implications of what he's doing, because, as stated many, many times before, if Chris had common sense, he certainly doesn't show it. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is Chris and Negotiation in full. And it's just, I'd say if you were going to like negotiate with Chris about maybe you had something that he wanted to buy from you, just tell him very simply, the prices of this is the final offer. You have to meet these terms if you want to buy this product or whatever it may be. If Chris says no, okay, I'll tell you what, I'll give you an example. Let's say if I run a commission on Fiverr, I'll design, and my premium rates are $20, let's say, for example. I will give you all of these. It will be from 3 to 4 days production. I will send you a copy of the file that I've worked on. I will send you the full copy. I will update you with revisions once a day up until the final product has been made. Anything you want to tell me about what you want me to do, any pictures you want me to reference to, or anything like that, please let me know, because these are terms and conditions I will include in if you want the premium offer. That seems very, very reasonable, wouldn't you say? The thing I imagine Chris would do is, I'd imagine if he was doing the same thing, a premium rate would be doing $200. He wouldn't ask whatsoever, really, for any reference image or any condition of any artwork, because on Fiverr you've got to like display your artwork, i.e. possibly due to some commissions that you've done for other people, or just necessarily what you're going to be offering to your clients. And then finally, well, Chris wouldn't even specify on timing, because he'll make some long lecture, you know, about the stresses of his life, which it's not good enough. Not for a business. It's not good enough to just constantly make excuses. You don't see Burger King or McDonald's making excuses like that, because if they did, they'd be driven out of business, because you don't want to negotiate with children, because children don't understand that they can't always get their own way, unlike certain mayors of Quickville. Which is kind of strange, really, when you think about Chris calling himself the mayor of Quickville, because he certainly doesn't act like any mayor I've ever seen. So anyway, I hope you guys have enjoyed this reading of Chris and Negotiation. Please make sure to leave your thoughts and comments in the comment section down below. Let me know what you guys thought of the article for yourselves. And I hope to see all of you guys again in the next video. Take care. Bye-bye for now.